I never imagined a routine massage appointment in downtown Chicago would shatter the careful walls I had built around my life. But when Marcus finished kneading the knots out of my shoulders and leaned close with a steady gaze, saying, "Ethan, if you're open to it, I offer a special service that helps with more than just tight muscles. It's a private conversation to unpack what's really weighing on you. No judgment, no extra charge." My breath caught in my throat, and every excuse I'd rehearsed for years suddenly felt paper thin. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the city traffic outside the tall windows of the wellness studio on Michigan Avenue. I sat up slowly, clutching the white sheet around my waist, staring at this man who looked every bit the confident, straight professional, broad shoulders, neatly trimmed beard, easy smile that had relaxed me during the hour-long session. At 28, I had moved from a small Illinois town to the city for a solid tech job, telling myself the distance would quiet the noise in my head. My parents still called every Sunday, asking when I'd meet a nice girl and settle down like my older brother. Work deadlines kept me chained to my laptop until midnight, but the real weight was the secret I carried alone, the quiet certainty that I was gay and the crushing fear of what admitting it would cost me. Marcus waited patiently, wiping his hands on a towel. "I've seen that look before," he said gently. "Not everyone needs it, but when the body carries emotional tension this heavy, sometimes talking it out with someone who gets it can be the real release." His voice held no pressure, only quiet understanding, and something in it made me nod before I could stop myself. "Okay," I managed. "What exactly does this special service involve?" He pulled up a chair, dimmed the overhead lights a notch, and began. "Just honesty. Tell me what's really keeping you up at night, and I'll share a piece of my own story if it helps." For the next 40 minutes, words I had never spoken aloud tumbled out. How my father's offhand comments about real men still echoed. How I had dated women in college to keep the peace. How the few times I had allowed myself to feel anything for another man left me terrified of discovery. Marcus listened without interrupting, his dark eyes steady. When I finally paused, breathless, he leaned forward. "I was 24 when I finally admitted it to myself," he said softly. "Thought the world would end. It didn't, but it did change everything, and not all of it was easy." He didn't push for details about himself yet, but the simple fact that he understood without pity cracked something open inside me. By the time I left the studio that evening, the November wind off Lake Michigan felt sharper, yet lighter. I had given him my number, not for anything romantic, just in case I wanted to talk more. Walking to the L train, I replayed his words and wondered if one conversation could really shift the foundation I had built my entire identity on. The next morning at the office, my coworker Ryan clapped me on the back and asked how the massage went. I mumbled fine and buried myself in code, but the tightness in my chest had eased just a fraction. That night Marcus texted, "No obligation, but if you ever want round 2 of the special service, the studio books quiet slots on Wednesdays." I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before typing back a single word. Maybe. Little did I know that single word had already set in motion a chain of events that would force me to choose between the safe life I knew and the one I had never dared to claim. Over the following week, work stress mounted with a major product launch looming. My mother called twice, hinting that my cousin's wedding was coming up and wouldn't it be nice if I brought someone. Each call left me drained, replaying the same old script in my head. On Wednesday, I found myself back at the studio, telling myself it was only for the conversation. Marcus greeted me with the same calm professionalism, but this time the air between us felt charged with possibility. We settled in the same room, and he started by asking how the week had gone. I told him about the family pressure, the way my brother's perfect straight life was held up as the standard I could never reach. He nodded, then shared more of his own past. How his father had stopped speaking to him for 6 months after he came out. How he had rebuilt his life brick by brick in Chicago, finding a community that accepted him without question. "It's not about being brave overnight," he said. "It's about small choices that add up." As the session ended, he didn't charge me extra, just shook my hand and said, "You're carrying less tension already. Keep going at your own pace." I left feeling seen in a way no one had ever made me feel. That weekend, I met my best friend Sarah for coffee in Lincoln Park. She had always been the one person who suspected but never pushed. When I casually mentioned the massage therapist's special service, she raised an eyebrow. Sounds like more than a back rub, Ethan. I laughed it off, but her words lingered. Was I reading too much into kindness? By the end of the month, Marcus and I had met 3 more times. Each conversation peeled back another layer. My fear of losing my parents' love, his stories of early heartbreak and eventual peace. He never once crossed a professional line. The special service remained exactly what he promised, a space for honesty. Yet something was shifting. I found myself looking forward to Wednesdays, not just for relief, but for the way his steady presence made the world feel a little less hostile. One evening, after a particularly rough day at work, I texted him outside our usual schedule. Rough day. Any chance for an unscheduled talk? His reply came quickly. Studio closes at 8. Come by the side entrance. Coffee's on me after. That was the night everything began to change. I arrived at the studio just as the last clients were leaving, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. Marcus unlocked the side door with a small smile and led me to the same familiar room, but this time he had 2 mugs of coffee waiting on the small table. No table tonight, he said. Just 2 guys talking. You sounded like you needed it. We sat in the comfortable armchairs usually reserved for consultation, and I poured out the latest crisis. My boss had singled me out in a meeting for missing a deadline that wasn't even mine, and a familiar voice in my head whispered that if I were normal, maybe I wouldn't be so distracted. Marcus listened, then shared how he had once lost a corporate job because the stress of hiding who he was made him sloppy. I learned the hard way that pretending takes more energy than being honest ever will, he said quietly. The conversation stretched past closing time. He told me about the first man he had ever loved, how that relationship had taught him that real connection didn't need to be hidden to be real. I found myself admitting things I had never told anyone. The night in college when I had almost kissed my roommate and panicked for weeks afterward, the way I still scanned every room for judgment. Marcus didn't offer advice. He simply mirrored back what I was feeling until it no longer felt shameful. When I finally checked my phone, it was nearly 11. I should let you get home, I said, standing. He walked me to the door and paused. You're doing the work, Ethan. That matters more than you know. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of calm. At the office, Ryan noticed immediately. You look different, man. Like you actually slept. I shrugged and changed the subject, but inside I wondered how long I could keep this new lightness hidden. Sarah texted me later that day, asking if I wanted to grab drinks after work. Over craft beer at a quiet bar in Wicker Park, she pressed gently. You've been different since you started seeing that massage guy. Good different. I told her about the conversations, framing them as stress relief. She studied me for a long moment. Just be careful, Ethan. Sometimes help comes from places you don't expect, and sometimes it changes everything. Her words echoed in my head on the train ride home. 2 weeks later, my parents announced they were coming to Chicago for a long weekend. The news hit like a freight train. I spent the days leading up cleaning my apartment, rehearsing lies, and fighting the rising panic. Marcus sensed something was off during our next session. When I told him, he nodded slowly. You don't have to perform for them forever, but you also don't have to do it alone. He offered to be a sounding board anytime. That offer became my lifeline. The night before my parents arrived, I called them instead of texting. We talked for an hour about boundaries and truth and the courage it takes to live honestly. His voice on the line felt like an anchor. My parents' visit was a masterclass in performance. We toured the city, ate deep dish pizza, and I smiled through every question about my dating life. My father clapped me on the back and said, "You're doing great, son. Just need to find the right girl." Each word carved deeper into the secret I was carrying. The night they left, I drove straight to the studio even though it was closed. Marcus met me at the door in jeans and a hoodie, no professional mask. We walked along the lakefront path under the cold December stars, and I finally broke down. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. He didn't hug me. He simply walked beside me in silence until I was ready to speak again. That night, I realized the special service had become something far more important than either of us had planned. the beginning of a friendship that felt dangerously like home. Work grew more intense with the holiday rush. Ryan started asking questions about my sudden wellness routine. One afternoon he joked, "This Marcus guy must be a miracle worker. You're almost smiling these days." The comment landed wrong, stirring old fears. I brushed it off, but the seed of doubt was planted. That evening, Marcus and I grabbed coffee after his last client. Not at the studio this time, but at a small cafe near Millennium Park. Sitting across from him in the warm light, watching him laugh at my terrible attempt at a joke, I felt the first real flutter of something beyond gratitude. I pushed it down immediately. He was straight, or at least he had never given any indication otherwise. The special service was professional kindness, nothing more. Yet when we said goodnight and he squeezed my shoulder, the touch lingered longer than necessary. Christmas came and went in a blur of family video calls and forced cheer. On New Year's Eve, I found myself alone in my apartment, staring at the city fireworks from my window. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "If you're not doing anything, the studio has a quiet rooftop access. Best view in the city, no crowds." I went. We stood side by side under the exploding sky, shoulders almost touching, and he turned to me. "New year, new chapter. You ready?" I didn't answer with words. I simply nodded, feeling for the first time that maybe I was. January brought bitter cold and a new rhythm to my weeks. Wednesdays became sacred, sometimes at the studio, sometimes just long walks along the frozen lake. Marcus never pushed, never labeled what we were doing. The special service had evolved naturally into friendship, yet each conversation stripped away another layer of my armor. I told him about the summer I was 16 and realized I was different when I couldn't stop thinking about the captain of the baseball team. He shared how he had come out to his sister first, how she had cried happy tears and helped him find the words for his parents. Our stories wove together like threads, creating something stronger than either of us alone. At work, the product launch succeeded, but Ryan's jokes about my mystery masseur grew louder. One Friday, he cornered me in the break room. "Dude, you're glowing. You seeing someone?" I laughed it off, but the question followed me home. That night, I met Marcus at a small Italian place in Little Italy, our first real dinner outside the studio. Over pasta and red wine, he asked about my family's expectations again. I admitted the guilt I carried every time I dodged their questions. He listened, then said softly, "You deserve to live a life that doesn't require constant performance." His words settled in my chest like warm light. When the check came, he insisted on paying, calling it part of the extended service. We laughed, but the air between us had shifted. February brought my first real test. Sarah invited me to her birthday party at a rooftop bar downtown. Marcus came as my +1 after I nervously asked if he wanted to join. He showed up in a dark sweater that made his shoulders look even broader, and for the first time I saw him through the eyes of my friends. Sarah pulled me aside halfway through the night. "Ethan, he's incredible. And the way he looks at you." She didn't finish the sentence. I brushed it off, but her words echoed. Later, walking home through the slushy streets, Marcus asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. I was terrified of what people might see. He stopped under a street lamp and said, "You don't have to figure it all out tonight, but you're not alone anymore." That was the night I allowed myself to wonder if the feeling growing between us was mutual. Work tension peaked when a new colleague, Derek, transferred from the New York office. He was loud, confident, and seemed to sense something about me immediately. During a team happy hour, he made a casual comment about certain types of guys who keep to themselves. Ryan laughed, but I felt exposed. That weekend, I canceled our usual walk with Marcus, claiming a headache. He texted back immediately, "I'm here if you need to talk." No pressure. The next day, I showed up at the studio unannounced. Marcus canceled his last appointment without hesitation and listened while I spilled every fear. When I finished, he said, "You're stronger than you think. And if the world finds out, you'll still be you, the same guy who's brave enough to keep showing up." His belief in me was more powerful than any massage. March brought the first hints of spring and the first real crack in my carefully constructed world. My brother called to say he and his wife were expecting their first child. The congratulations fell hollow because all I could hear was the unspoken question: when would I give my parent a grandchild? That night, I met Marcus at the lakefront again. We sat on a bench watching the ice break up on the water, and I cried for the first time in front of him. He didn't pull away. He simply sat there, shoulder against mine, until the tears stopped. Then he spoke. Family love doesn't have to look the way they want it to. Sometimes it just needs time to catch up. His words planted a seed of hope I had never allowed myself to feel. By late March, our friendship had deepened into something neither of us named. We texted daily, shared playlists, argued about the best deep dish in the city. One evening after a long day, he invited me to his apartment for a simple home-cooked meal. It was small, warm, filled with books and plants. We cooked together, laughing when I burned the garlic. Sitting across from him at his tiny table, I realized I had stopped thinking of him as just the massage therapist. He was Marcus, kind, steady, the first person who had ever made me feel truly safe. When I left that night, he hugged me at the door, and neither of us pulled away quickly. The embrace lingered, full of unspoken possibility. April brought sunshine and the first real crisis. Derek from work had apparently seen Marcus and me leaving the Italian restaurant weeks earlier. He cornered me in the elevator one morning. "So that's why you're always smiling lately. Didn't know you swung that way." His tone was light, but the words landed like a punch. I denied nothing and everything at once, mumbling something about friendship. By lunch, the rumor had spread through half the team. Ryan pulled me aside, confused and concerned. "Dude, if it's true, cool. But you could have told me." The betrayal stung, not from malice, but from the casual way my private world had been cracked open. I left work early and went straight to Marcus. He listened without surprise. "People talk. It doesn't change who you are." But I was spiraling. That weekend my mother called, voice tight. "Your cousin said she heard something about you from a friend in Chicago. Is there anything you want to tell us?" The question hung between us like a guillotine. I lied. I said it was nothing, just work stress. When I hung up, I felt physically sick. Marcus came over that evening with takeout Thai food and no expectations. We sat on my couch, and he let me vent until I had no words left. Then he said the words that changed everything. "I've been where you are. The fear is real, but so is the freedom on the other side." For the first time, he told me the full story of his own coming out. The months of silence from his father, the therapy, the decision to move to Chicago and start fresh. Hearing it from someone who had survived made my own fear feel survivable. May arrived with warmer days and growing tension at work. Derek avoided me now, but the damage was done. I started receiving strange looks in meetings. Sarah was the only bright spot. She came over one night with ice cream and said, "Whatever happens, I've got your back." Marcus and I spent more time together, picnics in Grant Park, quiet evenings on his rooftop. One Saturday, we took the train to the Indiana Dunes and walked the beach for hours. Standing at the water's edge, wind whipping around us, he turned to me and said, "I've never offered this special service to anyone else like this. With you, it stopped being professional a long time ago." My heart hammered. I didn't know what to say, so I simply reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation. We stood there, fingers intertwined, watching the waves until the sun set. It was the first time I had ever held another man's hand in public. The fear was still there, but so was something stronger. The following week, my parents announced they were coming for Mother's Day. The timing couldn't have been worse. Marcus helped me prepare, role-playing conversations, reminding me I didn't know anyone my truth until I was ready. The visit was torture. Every smile felt forced. Every question about my future a landmine. The night before they left, my father pulled me aside. "Son, we just want you happy. Whatever that looks like." His words were kinder than I expected, yet I still couldn't speak. After they drove away, I called Marcus, voice shaking. He came over immediately. We sat on the floor of my living room surrounded by half-empty coffee cups, and I finally said the words out loud. "I think I'm falling for you." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled softly. "Good, because I've been falling for you since the first conversation." June brought Pride Month banners across the city and the highest point of tension yet. Work had become unbearable. Derek filed a complaint about unprofessional atmosphere, twisting innocent comments into something sinister. HR called me in for a meeting that felt more like an interrogation. I left feeling stripped bare. That same afternoon, my brother texted a family photo from the baby shower, captioned, "Wish you were here with someone special." The contrast was too much. I canceled everything and drove to Marcus's apartment, arriving unannounced and shaking. He opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me inside without a word. We sat on his couch, and I poured out every fear, the job, the family, the terror that loving him would cost me everything I'd built. Marcus listened, then did something he had never done before. He took both my hands and said, "I love you, Ethan. Not the version you show the world, the real one. And I will stand beside you no matter what you choose." The words hit me like sunlight after years of storm. I kissed him then, tentative, trembling, full of every emotion I'd held back for months. It wasn't passionate in the way movies show. It was honest, scared, and perfectly right. We spent the evening talking about what came next, making no grand plans but promising to face whatever happened together. The next morning, reality crashed in. HR called me back in and suggested I take a leave of absence while we sort things out. I knew what that meant. Walking out of the building, I felt both terrified and strangely free. I went straight to Marcus at the studio. Between clients, he held me in the back room and said, "You don't have to fight alone anymore." That night, we cooked dinner together and talked about telling my family. I decided to wait until I had something solid to say. July brought the breaking point. My parents saw a social media post. Someone from work had tagged me in a Pride event photo with Marcus in the background. My mother called at midnight, voice trembling. "Is it true? Are you with a man?" The question I had dreaded for years was finally here. I told her yes. The silence on the line lasted forever. My father took the phone and said, "We need time, son." Then they hung up. I sat on the floor of my apartment and cried harder than I had since I was a child. Marcus stayed with me all night, not fixing anything, just being there. The next morning he said, "This is the hardest part, but you survived it, and I'm still here." Work officially let me go 2 days later with a severance package and a vague statement about cultural fit. The betrayal from Derek and the company stung, but Marcus helped me see it as a door closing so another could open. We spent the next weeks rebuilding, updating my resume, talking to career counselors who understood, and simply being together. One evening on his rooftop, he turned to me and said, "Whatever happens with your family, you have a new one here. With me." I believed him. August brought cooler evenings and the slow process of healing. My brother called first, awkward but kind. "We're figuring this out as a family," he said. My parents followed a week later. The conversation was painful, full of tears and long silences, but they didn't disown me. "We love you," my mother said finally. "We just need time to understand." It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was a beginning. Marcus held my hand through the entire call, his presence steady as always. September found me starting a new job at a smaller tech firm that celebrated diversity. The difference was night and day. Colleagues who asked about Marcus by name, team lunches where no one whispered. Marcus and I moved in together quietly one weekend, carrying boxes up the stairs of his apartment while laughing about how far we had come from that first massage table conversation. The special service had become a lifetime commitment. On a crisp October evening, we stood on the same lakefront path where we had first held hands. The city lights sparkled across the water, and Marcus turned to me with a small box in his hand. Inside was a simple silver band. "Not asking for forever yet," he said softly, "but asking if you'll walk toward it with me." I said yes through happy tears. We slipped the rings on each other's fingers under the stars. Two men who had found each other through honesty and courage. Looking back now, the journey from that shocked moment on the massage table to this quiet, joyful life feels both impossible and inevitable. Every fear, every misunderstanding, every sacrifice had led here to love that didn't need hiding. True or false? Family acceptance is more important than personal happiness when choosing who to love?